Imagine a king so physically twisted, so profoundly disfigured, that his own subjects whispered behind trembling hands that he was not human, but a creature bewitched by dark supernatural powers. His face alone was enough to make even the bravest courtiers avert their gaze in horror. Now, what if the truth was far darker than any spell or curse? What if the real horror was hidden not in magic, but deep within the royal bloodline itself, an ancient secret that the most powerful dynasty in Europe desperately tried to hide until it burst forth in a living nightmare? This is the tragic story of Charles II of Spain, known as El Hechizado, the Bewitched One. His life was an endless torment, his body a prison of genetic catastrophe. But how did this happen, and what terrifying truths emerged when death finally freed him from suffering? If you're intrigued by chilling mysteries hidden in the shadowy corners of history secrets your textbooks would never dare reveal, then join us as we uncover the disturbing reality behind royal power. When ambassadors first encountered King Charles II, they couldn't hide their shock. Before them stood the ruler of the most influential empire on earth, yet he was a grotesque spectacle, his jaw jutting forward so severely that his mouth was permanently open, hanging like a broken hinge. Charles's lower jaw extended so unnaturally that even with his mouth closed, a visible gap remained between his upper and lower teeth, wide enough to slide a coin through. But Charles's deformity was no accident of fate. It was the predictable outcome of nearly 2 centuries of calculated marriages among his own relatives. The infamous Habsburg dynasty believed power could only be kept pure by marrying within the family. Cousins wed cousins, uncles married nieces, weaving a tangled genetic web so intricate that Charles himself was simultaneously his own cousin, uncle, and nephew, multiple times over. As a result, Charles II inherited what doctors today call mandibular prognathism, but history remembers simply as the Habsburg jaw. Eating became a humiliating daily battle. Royal chefs prepared his food like infant meals, serving it pureed, mashed, or liquefied. Yet even these meals turned into shameful ordeals. Soups leaked helplessly from the corners of his mouth. Solid food spilled out embarrassingly onto his royal robes. His courtiers watched in uncomfortable silence as servants discreetly dabbed saliva from the king's chin, turning elegant banquets into grim spectacles of public humiliation. Perhaps even more devastating was Charles's speech. His deformed jaw robbed him of clear pronunciation, leaving him capable only of muffled, wet mumbles that no one, neither foreign diplomats nor his own court, could clearly understand. His proclamations, the words of the world's most influential empire, required interpreters, not due to language, but simply to decipher the slurred gibberish issuing from the king's malformed mouth. Palace records reveal the haunting fears of his own mother, Queen Mariana. In letters, she expressed her terror that her son would choke on his own tongue while sleeping. Europe's most powerful ruler was reduced to a choking hazard, yet the Habsburgs persisted with their marriages, prioritizing power over their offspring's misery. Charles II became the human embodiment of what happens when genetic ambition pushes nature too far. The grotesque jaw was merely the visible surface of a tragedy far deeper, far darker. Charles's entire body seemed to rebel against the natural order, twisted and misshapen by centuries of genetic catastrophe. At age 35, the king of the most formidable empire on earth appeared more like a fragile child whose body had been warped by cruel, invisible hands. Standing barely 5 feet tall, Charles's proportions defied human norms. His oversized head swayed atop a spindly neck, too frail to support its weight. Thin, brittle limbs protruded awkwardly from a torso that appeared painfully compressed, permanently bent in a grotesque hunch. He could not walk until he was 8 years old. Think about that haunting fact. Where most children run and play at the age of 1, Charles spent nearly a decade imprisoned by his own frail body, unable even to support his own weight. Even when Charles finally did manage to walk, it was a stumbling shuffle, a tragic parody of normal movement. Palace archives vividly describe him staggering from wall to wall, grasping furniture like an elderly invalid, though he was supposed to be in the prime of his life. His spine, severely curved, trapped him in a permanent slouch, an eternal reminder of the crushing weight of his family's poisonous genetic legacy. But the physical deformities were just half the tragedy. The mental cost was devastating. His intellect remained stunted. He couldn't read until age 10, and even then comprehension eluded him. His frustrated tutors likened educating Charles to pouring water into a cracked vase. Knowledge simply drained away without leaving a trace. Emotionally, Charles was equally crippled. Palace servants whispered nervously about his violent tantrums, episodes in which he screamed, thrashed, and wept uncontrollably over trivial inconveniences. These outbursts alternated with eerie episodes of silent withdrawal, when Charles would stare into empty space for hours, completely detached from reality. Even his royal hair betrayed the genetic horror lurking within. It grew thinly, falling out in patchy clumps, leaving his scalp exposed in a grotesque pattern more befitting a diseased animal than a reigning monarch. Official portrait artists desperately employed flattering techniques to hide his true condition, but reality refused to be entirely disguised. Worst of all, as Charles aged, his already fragile body deteriorated rapidly, faster than ordinary aging could account for. Doctors of the time were mystified, witnessing a body seemingly attempting to shut itself down from the inside. Charles's tragic physical condition soon became a political nightmare that threatened not only Spain, but the entire continent. For a king's most fundamental duty, to produce heirs, proved utterly impossible for the doomed monarch. Desperate to continue the royal line, Charles married Marie-Louise of Orleans, a young French princess who arrived in Spain anticipating grandeur, only to find herself trapped in a heartbreaking nightmare. Their wedding night ended disastrously. Servants later recounted how Marie-Louise emerged weeping uncontrollably, while Charles appeared confused and distressed. The genetic mutations that had so cruelly twisted Charles's body also rendered him completely impotent. Doctors described his reproductive organs as underdeveloped, infantile, ensuring he remained forever trapped at a prepubescent stage despite his age. Yet publicly, the Spanish court could never admit the king's impotence. Instead, they cruelly blamed Marie-Louise for failing to conceive. She endured humiliating examinations, painful treatments, and drank toxic herbal concoctions in a desperate bid to produce an heir her husband was biologically incapable of fathering. Once vibrant and intelligent, Marie-Louise became increasingly withdrawn, emotionally destroyed by the cruel pressures of the court. When she mysteriously died at age 26, possibly due to the poisonous fertility treatments and extreme stress, Charles quickly remarried, this time to Maria Anna of Neuburg. But by then, Charles's physical and mental state had deteriorated even further. Maria Anna privately expressed horror at her husband's appearance, realizing immediately that producing an heir was hopeless. The court grew frantic. Europe's best doctors were summoned, ancient fertility rituals were performed, even magical remedies attempted. Charles endured repeated humiliating examinations by physicians desperate to fix the impossible. Yet nothing worked because the issue was genetic, irreversible, hidden deep within his royal blood. Meanwhile, European powers watched with growing impatience. The throne of Spain, the most powerful empire in Europe, was about to become vacant, and every kingdom eagerly sharpened their swords, anticipating the chaos to come. Charles II, the tragic king who could not produce an heir, became the ticking time bomb of a continent teetering on the brink of war. With medicine failing utterly, the desperate Spanish court turned to the supernatural, convinced their king was victim to dark, demonic forces. What followed was one of the most chilling and bizarre episodes ever documented in European royal history. Father Froilan Diaz, the court's chief exorcist, boldly proclaimed that Charles's body had become a dwelling place for evil spirits, placed there by witchcraft. But these exorcisms were not quiet rituals in secluded chapels. They became grand, theatrical performances held in the heart of the royal palace, forcing nobles and foreign dignitaries alike to witness the terrifying spectacle. Imagine the throne room transformed into a dark stage where Charles lay writhing on the floor, priests shouting Latin prayers and incantations. Charles, weak and confused, was forced to consume holy water mixed disturbingly with crushed religious relics, essentially dirt and fragments of ancient bones. Naturally, he would vomit violently, shake uncontrollably, and occasionally lose consciousness reactions the priests interpreted triumphantly as demonic resistance to their sacred rituals. But Father Diaz's exorcisms went even further. Convinced that the entire palace was infested with demonic contamination, he ordered a mass cleansing. Servants were instructed to collect objects suspected of witchcraft, personal items, royal gifts, even priceless furniture, and burn them in massive bonfires in the palace courtyard. Priests chanted endlessly, the flames casting eerie shadows on the horrified faces of the watching nobility. Ironically, Charles himself seemed to believe the exorcisms were helping him. His limited intellect left him tragically susceptible to the power of suggestion. Each ritual brought temporary relief from his chronic pain, trapping him in a cruel cycle where he begged desperately for more exorcisms, only deepening his suffering. The exorcisms climaxed dramatically in 1699, when Father Diaz triumphantly announced that he had expelled exactly 47 demons, each supposedly responsible for Charles's various afflictions. Yet this victory left the king so physically and mentally broken that he collapsed, unable to speak for 3 days. Unbeknownst to those around him, Charles's condition was rapidly deteriorating, not because of demons, but from severe, untreated medical issues that no ritual could cure. Behind the facade of supernatural theatrics lay the heartbreaking truth of a king slowly consumed by his own body. When Charles II finally succumbed at age 38, the Spanish court faced a harrowing moment of truth. For decades they had claimed he was cursed, but now physicians opened the king's corpse, prepared to confront reality. Yet what they discovered was far worse than any dark legend whispered in the shadows. The royal autopsy revealed Charles's body to be nothing short of a biological horror. Dr. Geronimo de la Fuente Pierola, who led the autopsy, described internal organs so grotesquely malformed they seemed impossible in a living human. His heart, shriveled and blackened, was barely the size of a walnut, too damaged to effectively circulate blood. His lungs were corroded, gangrenous sacs filled with fluid and decay. His intestines were rotting inside his body, producing a stench so foul that assistants fled the autopsy room. But perhaps most shocking were the revelations about Charles's reproductive system and brain. His reproductive organs were catastrophically undeveloped, forever trapped in infancy, finally explaining his impotence. His brain was surrounded by excessive fluid hydrocephalus that had severely damaged his mental capacities, leaving him permanently childlike and erratic. Dr. Pierola's chilling conclusion resonated across Europe. It is miraculous that this body sustained life at all, for it contained not a single healthy organ. Ironically, the sheer severity of Charles's physical condition strengthened beliefs in supernatural intervention rather than dispelling them. How, people wondered, could any man survive with organs so utterly destroyed, unless cursed by something profoundly evil? Charles II had indeed been cursed, but the curse was genetic, not supernatural. For 38 torturous years, he had slowly decayed from within, his failing body a testament to the destructive obsession of his ancestors. Charles II's death triggered exactly what the Habsburg dynasty had sought to avoid: chaos and war. Unable to father an heir, Charles left the Spanish throne vacant, sparking the War of Spanish Succession, a bloody conflict spanning more than a decade, claiming hundreds of thousands of lives across Europe. The Habsburg dynasty, fixated on genetic purity as a means of consolidating power, ultimately destroyed itself from within. Charles II, El Hechizado, stands as a haunting reminder of how absolute power, when combined with dangerous obsession, can lead not to glory but ruin. In a cruel twist of fate, biology, not war or rebellion, toppled one of Europe's mightiest dynasties. Charles II was not simply a tragic monarch. He became living proof that sometimes the greatest threat to absolute power is hidden deep within its own veins. If this disturbing, hidden chapter of royal history fascinates you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment below. Let us know what other shocking secrets of royalty you want us to explore next.